Well, hello and welcome to the Marina Perry Podcast. I am, as always, your host, and today I have the most amazing, and I really mean it, Lynn Kendall on the show, and we are going to have such a juicy conversation about something that I feel very passionately about, as I know Lynn does too, and it's about resilience in children and what we can do to bolster it, to amplify it. And Lynn is a specialist in this space. So Lynn, as she will share with you, has over 35 years in the education system as a teacher inside of Australia's, schooling system. And she studied psychology. And so she really sits in this beautiful realm of the education psychology spectrum. And she has created the most epic program and I guess, movement called the Resilience Tutor, because as Lynn will share with you, she really believes that resilience trumps intellect when it comes to what we need to instill in our children in schools. And I know many of you listening as parents probably would agree, or maybe don't. And so definitely tune in and have a listen as to why. So welcome to the show, Lynn. I'm so excited to have this chat with you today.
Thank you so much, Marina. And I just love having conversations all about resilience in children. Those two topics just go together perfectly.
Well, I mean, resilience and children, they should go together, but let's be honest. If we look around the world today, we could argue that they currently aren't going hand in hand. Would you agree? Like the statistics and the studies are showing that our children are actually in desperate need of support systems, perhaps because of what's happening with social media, or, we can talk about the reasons. But before we dive into all of the things, we have a little bit of the word has escaped me, but basically what we do on the show is I ask two questions first off. So the first question for you, Lynn, is what animal would you be if there was an animal that best represented your way of being in the world?
The owl. The owl is my most favorite animal because, he loves to sit in his tree. He sleeps at nighttime as well, which is he sleeps during the daytime, which is perfect because that's actually when I prefer to sleep, even though it doesn't quite work in society. But also because he just has the ability to sit in his tree and glance out and see a wide variety of distances and spaces. So I just like the thought of being able to sit still in my little tree, make it my little home, and just check out and see what's happening in this world.
Very zen. That's awesome. And what superpower would you choose to have if you could just, manifest one up? Which one would you pick and why?
This is a tricky question. Superpowers. I guess I really love the superpower of resilience, in all honesty. I know that that's my space that I love to work in. But to me, having the superpower resilience really is the essence of living this life today. I just love to be able to pivot from one direction to another direction, go through life with ease and grace, and just enjoy everything that life has to offer and enjoy every experience that we're here to enjoy.
Beautiful. Well, let's dive on into resilience because it really is the cornerstone of the work that you do. So before, let's unpack how you came, through your vast and extensive, studying and application. How did you come to be the resilience tutor?
That's a very good question, and one that I'd love to tell. How it all came about was, I worked in the education system in Australia, and when I did that, I went, what I was seeing was children struggling. There was just struggle everywhere. They were struggling with their academic learning. They were struggling with their social and emotional skills. And that's all I could see. And then I was thinking, am I looking through my brain through the struggle lens? Is that why I'm seeing all of this struggle in these young people, And then I thought, okay, I'm going to answer this question once and for all. And I started studying psychology. When I studied psychology and I started working in schools as a psychologist, I went to myself, this is a pretty dumb profession I've got myself into, because I actually have to wait for children to have negative life experiences before they can come and see me. And I went, that doesn't work for me on any level. So I was still seeing the struggle. So I was confirming that there was still a lot of struggle because as I said, as a psychologist and as psychologists, we have to wait for children to go through the struggle. So I put my teaching hat on and went, what I'm going to do is create a teaching program. So I can teach children all about themselves. So I can teach them about their emotions, their thoughts, and their energy, and how that links to every experience that they have in life, because that's what they were coming to see me about. This is when I was back in the day, this is going back a while, when year 7 was a thing in primary schools. The teachers gave me 7 years, 7 boys. Okay, so they're roughly aged around 13 years of age. And what they wanted me to achieve is for them to be happy in class and to have positive life experiences. So I went, I wonder how I'm going to achieve that. Now, as I do, when you come and do it, work with me, I do all our thinking's visual, and I put all these thinking up into the whiteboards. So we're here putting positive thoughts up, positive emotions up, negative thoughts, negative emotions, whatever was happening. Then all of a sudden, the boys and I stood back and we went, there's a mathematical formula there. I said, really? Anyway, I looked a bit more and I went, do you know what? There is. So what we did was we created this mathematical formula, and one of them is positive thinking plus positive emotions equals positive experiences. And I said to the boys, go and prove or disprove me, because I've got no clues. We've just created this. I've got no clues if this is right or wrong. So off they went. They went, yep, if I have positive thinking, I can do this. This is amazing. And I feel really good. I actually have an awesome day. Anyway, as the boys were presented to me because they were experiencing challenges of life, we also then explored the negative. I said, okay, let's explore the negative, because it's important to explore both the positive and the negative. So we wrote up the equation, negative thinking plus negative emotions equals negative experiences. And I said to the boys, we don't need to prove or disprove this one. I can tell you hits, I'm not good at this. This is dumb. This is silly. And I'm not feeling very good. So I'm feeling a lot of anger. I'm feeling a lot of discontent. I'm feeling a lot of frustration. And I go, what did that equal? And they said, going to the principal's office, being expelled from school, not having success. I went, yep, we don't need to prove that story. Anyway, so then what we did was we mixed those mathematical formulas up. So I said to them, okay, if we've got positive thinking plus negative emotions, what's that going to equal? Because we can. If we think, okay, I can do this, this is awesome, and I'm setting myself up for success with my thinking, but my emotions just aren't on board. There's a glitch in those emotions. So we worked out what that equaled. So I said to them, go and prove or disprove this one for me. And then we created some more mathematical equations after that, because once we connect with ourselves, connect and understand our emotions and our thoughts and our energy, we understand the experiences that we're having. And that is resilience.
I love, well, two of the things that really struck me with what you just shared, Lynn, I really loved. I've never thought of it, I should say, rather, that say psychology or many of our health professions, it really is reactive. It's, well, there's a problem now, let's fix it. And I know you're a massive advocate for proactive, resilience tutoring in our children. And it makes a lot of sense to me, but that's a really good point. There is a flaw in the system, and the flaw is you kind of need to, need the help first. Yeah, wait. And so I love that you applied the teaching proactively. And I also love that these kids helped you really kind of break down, and you worked with them to figure out how to teach them. And I mean, there isn't a person on the planet where, regardless of age, right, that isn't a byproduct experience in the experience of life of their thoughts and their feelings. I mean, we have thoughts and feelings, and they create the filter through which we live life. I'm on board with that. And so I imagine, I know you have a massive program that is very successful, and thousands of children and families have benefited from it. And I'm just wondering, when you said there, in the past, it's like you have to have a problem to then fix it. And I know many of the children have come to you through your families, with challenges and with struggles. But what is your take, I guess, around resilience being taught proactively, or is it do people only pay attention, I guess, when there's a crisis? Or have you had great success with people just taking these skills on without, quote unquote, being challenges or in struggle? Like what's the uptake, and what's your take on that in general? Like, how should we be applying resilience as a tool?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question, because let me extend on that story I was just telling. After that actually happened, the boys actually went back to class and were having an amazing time in class. Another little boy came and saw me, and they said to me, I want you to come and see you. I said, why would you want to come and see me? You know, you're doing everything that you need to be doing, because I was known as only got the naughty boys got sent to me. Anyway, he said, because Johnny is now successful in class. I want to know what you told him. And I went, what very insightful. This little boy was in year 5. So from that day on, I went, awesome. So I marched into the principal's office like you do. And I said, I want to teach this whole class. So I explained what success I'd had with the children. I explained what my philosophy was all about resilience. And I said, imagine if every child learned these skills. So that way you're totally right. It comes from that nice proactive space, and children really get to understand who they are within that space, which is really, really exciting, because I do believe that we all need to know this. Like, I needed to learn this when I was 7. I wish I knew what I knew now when I was 7, because I went through my struggles in life. You know, I had this nice little major catastrophe in my life. I'll call it one of those things. And I went, okay, I've landed in this experience. That's how it was supposed to be. And I had to sift through all of my own emotions and all of my own thinking at that point in time. And I thought as an adult, I was on top of my emotions. I was all over this. After all, this is what I taught, you know, and all of a sudden, all of these new emotions just kept coming up. And I went, these were a lot of emotions I'd not experienced before. You know, this was a whole new ball game. So I really wish I had learned what I knew back when I was 7, which is why I love teaching from 7 years of age, because they are ready. They are ready to explore who we are as people. After all, we're an ecosystem. You know, our thoughts, our body, our brain are all connected. And one thing I love to teach them is all about their brain. So when children come to work with me, instead of saying, oh, this experience just happened, I say, oh, your brain must have reacted this way, or depending what the experience was, your body must have reacted this way, because it depends on how our body and brain react to a situation. And they go, yeah, actually, my body did just do that. Oh, yeah, my brain actually just did that. And there's a whole new different conversation, which is what I really, really love. So, you know, it's all about being proactive and teaching our young children right from 7 years of age, because I honestly believe that our job of this generation is to teach the next generation what they're going to need for their generation. So my mantra is creating generations, creating lives one step at a time. So, you know, and one way we do that is to ensure that our children are resilient for their lifetime.
And so I guess I'm wondering, you know, having worked with so many children, the children who are struggling behaviorally, you know, which obviously in the past, initially you were sent to you, you know, quote unquote, problem children, quote unquote, poor behavior, whatever it is. In your experience, what's the mistaken belief that either those children think or that society thinks needs to be sorted out, again, quotation marks, that you're like, if I could just tell everyone this about the problem children or the behavioral issues children, we really need to see it from this perspective. Like, what's a mistaken belief we have about that?
Oh, I love this question. This is one that I totally love to answer. What the mistaken belief is that we think about behavior is because behavior is the outcome. Behavior is what we see. So we either see the tantrum, or we see the meltdown, or we see some anger, or we see some frustration, throwing things. That's all the outcome of the behavior. So we call it behavior. But when we actually unpack what behavior is, it actually is emotions. And as we know, emotions actually stands for energy in motion within our body. So instead of the behavior, what we actually need to be dealing with or looking at, dealing with is the wrong word, or looking at is their emotion, and then responding to the emotion of the child, because the emotion is what's going through the child at that point in time. And that's what we're seeing. We just say, instead of saying, oh, I'm noticing that you're really angry, we look at the behavioral component. And I like to break it one step down further. So to me, behavior equals emotion, emotion equals energy. So, and what I do very differently in my programs is I teach from an energy perspective. So I teach 3 levels of energy, just as a beginning introduction to energy. And I teach it from high energy, centered energy, and low energy. And what that actually looks like, sounds like, and feels like in my body. Because once I understand my energy, I actually understand my experience so much more deeper. So now I actually say behavior equals emotions, which equals energy. So let's have a look at how energetically and what is energetically happening for the child as well. But more importantly, let's have a look at their emotions.
And so for a parent listening, because I have a number of parents that struggle to effectively, get the behaviors or the outcome they want at home, let's say, depending on the child's age. They might see the child not listening or the child, doing something that they don't want them to do. And then the parent often reacts in anger. And then, so what could it, if we were to give a parent a tangible tip, like with I'm hearing what you said, and I'm thinking, if we see a child do a behavior that we don't want them doing, that they're, previously been told not to do, let's assume, because it's fine if they didn't know not to do it, right? But they seem to be doing it and ask not to do it. And then we can feel our own emotions, but that's a whole other thing. Like,
That's right.
Parents also could benefit from these skills and this awareness too. But I guess if their parent at home wanted to tune in or approach the situation differently, what would be maybe the line of questioning, or what would you suggest a parent do first when they see a behavior they don't want?
Yeah, behavior is communicative. So the child is trying to tell them something by their behavior. What I get the parents to do first, and what I also love to do myself before I go into any situation. Now, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I still do this one thing over and over again, which is to get myself calm, centered, and focused. So first I check in with me. I check in with my energy. I check in with how I'm feeling, and I ensure that I've got enough oxygen in my body as well. So going through that calm, centered, and focused presentation of me and taking those nice deep grounded breaths, then I move towards the child and I look at the child and I'm going, okay, what emotion are they actually experiencing at this point in time? Now, sometimes as parents, and I was guilty of it as well, I want to rush in and fix that behavior. But sometimes we actually need to allow them to go through the behavior, to go through the emotion. If it's going on for a long period of time, that's where I would gently come in and just sit with them, not actually use any words, just sit in that space, because my energy is calm, centered, and focused. Their energy will collectively become the same as your energy. So sometimes we don't need words. Sometimes, though, I use a model called PACE, and PACE stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and engaging. Now, this model will get you through any behavioral difficulty that your child's experiencing. P stands for playfulness. So the first thing I actually go up and do, now I've done this in schools as well, a child's having this major meltdown, and the first thing I'll go up, depending on the age of the child, but say I'm dealing with a child who's in year 1, I'll go up and say, I spy with my little eye. Full meltdown happening, and I go up and say, I spy with my little eye. The child first stops actually and looks at me, decides whether he's going to continue the tantrum or whether he's curious about wanting to play my game. So I just hold the stance. I spy with my little eye. And after about 2 seconds, literally, the child is playing the game with me. Because what I've done there is I've used a distractor from the emotions and I've coming into connection with me. Then I come through acceptance. I hold out my hand and I get them to come with me. So I offer a gesture of connection. They come with me at that point in time, and then I do acceptance. I understand things are really tricky for you at the present moment. So I'm connecting with my emotion to their emotion. I'm really guessing that was a really tricky thing. And it sometimes depends on what's happening. I might go back to playfulness or come back into acceptance. Then I go into curiosity with me and I really engage them into this beautiful, curious space. And then from that space, they're open to having that conversation with me around what that area of difficulty was. Because sometimes what we like to do as parents is we like to either guess or we know. But what's really important is to come from the child's perspective. What were they experiencing before that behavior actually occurred or that challenge occurred for them? And then, of course, I go into E, which is the last pass, which is engaging. So by this stage, we've really engaged and connected. They're back to being calm, centered, and focused. And off they go, back into class, back to learning, or back into doing whatever activity you're doing at home. So that's a model that I share with parents all the time. And when it just flows in conversation with your children, and you're just getting into that nice connection space with them.
I think that's unbelievably valuable, Lynn. Thanks for sharing that. And just as a summary, because it pays, we learn through repetition, right? So PACE, playfulness, acceptance, connection, and engagement.
Curiosity and
curiosity.
Engagement.
Yes, connected with the acceptance. There you go. Thank you. Curiosity, which is getting curious as to their map, what's happening for them, and then engaging with them around it. And I also really loved, and I think it's a really important reminder for parents, when you said making sure you're centered first, because children are very responsive to our emotional state, aren't they? And often, I mean, I can certainly speak from experience. Sometimes my children are only unsettled because I am. Like, they're actually, the issue is me as the parent, you know.
Yep.
So like coming into that centered place, especially when they're younger, and making sure, because, you know, I believe that children are definitely watching us and observing and learning more from us than, you know, how we're being, rather than what necessarily we're saying.
Correct.
Like, instead of saying, if you're saying to the child, be calm, but you're a panicked person, well, they're going to learn panicked energy. So I think that's really valuable. And, you know, we can all just take a few deep breaths and drop into our heart space. Everything in life is going to go better. So
absolutely.
Love that. I have a question around, you know, why do you think we're in a time and a space where children need to learn resilience, if that makes sense? Like, what do you think is contributing to this being such a really critical, essential, that needs to be taught? Like, why are we at that place? Is there a cause, or is it a perfect storm of many things? Like, in your experience, what's led to this needing to be taught, I guess?
I don't think there's any one precise answer to this one. However, what I do know is there's so much happening for us. It's actually an exciting time to be living on this planet Earth. It really is. You know, we've got so many technology advances. You know, our minds are getting more and more sophisticated as we evolve as people. You know, it's just an exciting time to be here, but there is so much happening. We've got like, I tell this story. When I went to school, I wrote with inkwells and sat on long wooden benches. You know, when my kids went to school, they took pen and paper, but sat on their own individual desks. When my grandkids went to school, they took an iPad and had flexible learning environments. I don't know what the next generation is going to take to school, but they're going to need to know themselves. And I find the more children connecting with who they are, and it's exciting. Like, it's exciting time to start having these conversations. You know, going back to my own children, I had 3 boys, 1 girl, but my boys in that era, we were just starting to talk that boys have emotions. You know, it's okay for boys to cry. So I said to my boys, that's it. We're going to get on top of our emotions, you know. So anyway, I was busy as a mum exploring their emotions with them. Anyway, but I was studying away in my psychology stuff, and I said, hang on, stop. I've still got it wrong. And they're looking at me with rolled eyes like boys do. I need to know what you're thinking now. And they went, oh, Mum, you know, because, and this is another important point too, when I was in schools, particularly around that year 7, year 8 juncture, these boys kept coming to me and saying, I've got schizophrenia. I go, really? How do you know? And they said, because I've got that little voice in my head. I said, oh, no, let me tell you about that, you know. So and then I realized, because we're living in such a busy environment, which is really, really exciting, you know, we're making all these technological advances, we've actually lost who we are as people. So that's why I think it's so critical that we really understand. Resilience, to me, is understanding you. To me, we can build and design a resilient lifestyle. You know, and when I was seeing young people going through all of these struggles, or all of these lifetimes, all of these struggles and challenges, I really think it's because they were so overwhelmed with what's happening in their world. They sort of lost what was happening in their world. They were struggling, and then they were going through all of these negative life experiences. They couldn't quite work out what was actually happening for them. They certainly weren't going through them with ease and grace. They were certainly doing large bouncings right the way through, because they didn't understand life. They didn't understand who they were, and they have lost where they fit into even society. So I'd love to see children be able to pivot in any direction they need to go in for them, because I don't know, as I said, I don't know what their next generation is going to look like, but it's going to be busier than ours. So if life's going to get busier, then we need to be able to come back and really connect in with us and really understand our own resilience.
Yeah, I work obviously a lot with parents or adults, let's say, and I know that I guess, and I'm not blaming social media, because I agree with you. There's a lot of benefits that come from even, information at the fingertips that we have now. I remember back when I was younger, we had to look up encyclopedias and go to the library. And we used to have to sit a lot of the time in nature or just around being bored and being present with our own thoughts. So we had naturally, because of the pace and access to information and entertainment, a lot of downtime with ourselves. And, I was talking with someone the other day, and we were speaking about how people are straight onto their phones in the morning, looking at their phones nonstop. I was actually walking through an area the other day, and I noticed, a young girl was walking the dog, but she was just on the phone holding the leash while the dog kind of did its business. And then I looked around, and just how sort of inwardly, we are into these phones these days, like our faces are down into these phones, and we are not used to being present with ourselves. We're putting our attention constantly into these other things. And if we are not used to being present with ourselves, we cannot hear ourselves. We cannot feel ourselves. We're absent, right? We're outside of ourselves. And so then self-mastery, which of course, as you say, is really the foundation of self-resilience.
Correct.
Can't be there, because we're not attuned, if you will, to ourselves. And so something I've heard you speak about, and I'd love you to share more on it, is this thing that you work with children to, I guess, master. And it's this idea of the ultimate experience. I've heard you call it that. And I love that phrase. And I'd love for you to share with the listener, because, we'll link to everything that you do on our show notes. And just so people, at home know, you run programs for families where online you can teach children all of these tools and move them through a proven program that thousands of people have gone through, which is awesome. However, the goal for you, as you've shared with me in the past, is to reach this ultimate experience. So what is this ultimate experience?
Yeah. I've actually created that around my books. Actually, it was funny because when I was writing my books, because I wanted to, share my knowledge worldwide, I wanted to share it with everybody. So I've written some children's storybook, and when I was writing the book, when I was going through the process, the people helping me write said, your title is the outcome. It is what you want the children to experience. And I want them to have the ultimate experience. So my first book is actually called The Ultimate Experience, Discovering Me. And there's an ultimate discovery journal that goes with that. And the teenage one's called The Ultimate Teenage Experience, The Power of Perspective. So the ultimate experience for me is whatever experience the children bring, or the people want to have in their lives. Because, sometimes we go through life and life happens to us. That was certainly me in my younger days. I was just flowing along with life. It was all very merry and life was just happening to me. However, what I want children to do now, and what I've realized in my older wisdom of era, is that I want children to create their own life experiences. So I want them to have the ultimate experience, because for me here on planet Earth, we're going to go through a gazillion experiences. That's what we're here for. We're meant to have some pretty amazing experiences. We have some amazing ones, not so good ones, and some really tricky ones. It's the tricky ones I love helping the kids through. But after we've helped them through the tricky life experiences actually stop. They don't actually go on forever and ever and ever. We're not in a tricky life experience for our whole entire lifetime. And once we actually learn to master our tricky life experience, then we go on to creating our experience, which is the ultimate experience that you want to have in this lifetime for you.
Yeah. So with that level of self-mastery, then I guess they get to modify their identity of self. So if we go back to the children who originally started with you, and obviously it's expanded beyond, quote unquote, the behaviorally, challenged children. But I imagine you've seen children who maybe identify as, I don't know, dumb or slow or problem children really transform their identity of self because of their ability to navigate their thoughts and their emotions and their feelings to create, I guess, new outcomes and experiences. Is that kind of the goal?
Yeah.
And then they can learn that they can proactively do that in their lives as opposed to reactively.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
With the goal of them ultimately creating the experiences that they want to have. I worked with a young person. I mean, he's not so young now, but he's still in his 20s, so I'm going to still categorize that young. When I first met him, he was 13 years of age. I'm going to call him my lost teenagers, and they're the ones I love to working with him as well, because he was exactly that child you just described. No success at school. They want to label him as ADHD and ASD, and I just went, oh, no, I don't think so. Let me up my studies and see if I can work this out. So, but school just wasn't his thing. He just wasn't academically minded at all. Anyway, so when he came to me, we worked on his self-identity. We worked on how his thoughts were engaging with his emotions and the experiences that was having, because he was having lots of negative ones. He was stuck in that cycle. So we worked through that type of process. But then what I love taking the children through next, which is in my teenage book, The Power of Perspective, it's all about the passion and the curiosity. What is it that they really want to do? What is their ultimate experience? Now, his was to become a tow truck driver. So what he did was, and he has a successful business today in Brisbane, and he has more than one trucks. He has employees now, and and he's still only 25 years of age. So how cool is that? So cool. Because that's his ultimate experience. That's his ultimate thing that he wants to do in life, and it's so funny, really, because he's got all of his initials all over his tow truck company, and he drives past the schools where those teachers were. That said, you're really not going to achieve in this world, and he's the happiest person on this planet roundabout now, because he's really connected with himself, connected with his passion of being a tow truck driver and living his ultimate best life at 25. So, you couldn't be prouder of what he's achieved. And I know he's definitely proud of what he's achieved because of what he's learned all about himself and the ultimate experience that he wanted to have in this lifetime.
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I know you're very passionate about, but I agree with you that resilience should trump intellect inside the classroom and generally in life as well. And because the school system at the moment really measures only a particular style or type of intellect. And so I guess we do, though, as a society, still value, smartness through that filter, through that measure in school. And I know that there are parents out there who, pull their hair out and apply a lot of pressure to very young humans, in my opinion, to do better through a system that is a little bit flawed for it doesn't fit everyone. So maybe for the parents out there who, who are just really fixated or stressed a little bit about their children, not being as academic as they would like, or, not getting the grades that they would like, what would you, if you could speak to them and say, listen, there are, some other things to focus on, and here's why, what might you suggest to them if they're really thinking, look, the only thing that matters at school is grades, let's get them sorted? What would you say with all your experience, with all the children you've worked with over all the years in the education system?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. Getting to know who they are, getting to know their uniqueness, and getting to know their strengths and weaknesses, and checking to see if they love those weaknesses. I worked with a little boy not so long ago, and he actually loved his weaknesses and he didn't want to change them. And I said to him, that's awesome. Let's not change them then. If you're really happy with them and you know exactly what they are and you can talk to that, that's awesome. So knowing their uniqueness, knowing their strengths, and knowing what they want to achieve in this lifetime, and then working towards that achievement. You're totally right. We're not all academic, and we weren't all born to be academic. The system is a one-fit-all system that is flawed, that doesn't work in the way that, to enhance the whole diversity of the world that we live in, because our world is becoming more and more diverse, which is the exciting part. But we haven't got a system that has moved with that diversity just yet. So they're still going, they have got an exceptionally overcrowded curriculum. They're coming and moving into this social and emotional space. But for me, they could move into it a lot faster. If we taught children, even from as young as prep and year 6, more about themselves and being connected with themselves. Academically, your brain actually becomes freer, and academically, you can absorb and learn more. So our brain at the present moment becomes overcrowded with the overcrowded curriculum, and it goes, I can't sort any of this out. So it just becomes in this total overwhelmed or frustrated space. What we actually need to do is the opposite. What we actually need to do is give our children less information, or information that they can use for their age and stage of life, and connect that with how they're feeling, connecting with their emotions, having those beautiful conversations around their emotions, checking in on their energy, because part of what our human body is designed to do is it's actually designed to actually move energy through our body the whole entire time. The whole entire day, we're meant to go from high energy to centered energy to low energy. So being able to be aware of where our energy is, where our oxygen is within our body at any point in time. So teaching them self-awareness from a very young period of time and teaching them all about their body and their brain, because that is a human vessel that we're here to live this ultimate experience through. So for me, and I hope I've answered your question, is really to be connected to self from a very young period, from a very young age, and knowing how to teach that to our young people.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to me because, we can only receive any information anyway, right? When our system is like regulated, if we're in a stressed out situation, it's not the time to sit down and get wiser or gain more knowledge. It's the time to stay alive. And I think a lot of parents, maybe unwittingly and certainly unintentionally, I'm sure, but with that extra pressure, are actually activating a stress response in their beautiful children, which then makes them less able to receive information. And instead of, as you say, it's not about more learnings, it's about what can we even receive. And if I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I'm dumb and I can't do this, but gee, I should try harder, I'm all my energy and my system is shut down to actually opening to new learnings.
That's right.
But if they could, first of all, notice that, and secondly, if we could support them both as parents and teachers, which I know you work a lot inside the education system, and a whole system for working with teachers as well, which is fantastic. So if we can support them to understand, like maybe it's time to just take a moment because you're unable to receive, and maybe my energy is low, and what can I do about that? And not wrong it, right? Because that's the thing. If we wrong it and we resist it, then we are unable to accept and work with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something you just touched on, but I know you're very, again, experienced in, and I'd love us just to speak briefly into it, is this emotional and social, because we do have a lot of, I guess, even social issues coming up for children. Again, it's a very busy, alive time. And yet I've heard you mention that emotional intelligence precedes social agility or flexibility even, or skills. Could you share with us what that really means?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. Actually, in the education department, they actually call the curriculum the social and emotional curriculum. And they've actually got the horse before the cart, as I say, because we actually have to know our emotions and feel our emotions first. We need to be emotionally regulated before we can actually be social with somebody else. So, and this is a perfect illustration. A little child who is 5 years old age, so just starting prep. Okay, she's very emotionally aware of her emotions. She has energy flowing through her body just beautifully the whole entire day. She understands her emotions beautifully. She can fluently talk about her emotions, and she will say, I am feeling this at the present moment, Anyway, this little boy in her classroom, so she's in prep, just started because it is term 1, and this has just happened, this experience. And this little boy was having these meltdowns continuously. So just not being able to regulate his emotions and get on top of what's actually happening for him. It's because the environment is just overwhelming, and he's just having too many different experiences that his brain cannot compute. So she says to him, holds out a little hand first, and then she says to him, come and sit over here with me. So she did connection just beautifully with him. So he came and sat, so he stopped, because it was a novel approach for him. It actually stops the behavior. When we approach something in a novel way, we, as humans, we're naturally curious. Anyway, he came and sat next to her, and she said to him, do you know, if you keep getting angry, you will have no friends. That is a perfect example. She was totally right. So because what we do is we immediately, as human beings, in our brain, we have what is called mirror neurons. So the job of our mirror neurons is to communicate our emotions all of the time. So we are emotionally wired all the time. I'm receiving your emotion at the present moment. You're receiving my emotion at the present moment. As parents, we unknowingly are really connected to our children through our emotions. So if we understand our emotional self, we then can be social with other people. So emotional regulation becomes before you can actually go into any social conversation. So if somebody says to me, you need to teach my children social skills, I went, can I teach them emotional skills instead? I said, because that actually comes first before the actual social skills. And and I explain why, and they go, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. So, ASD children have a lot of difficulty communicating socially with other people, because what they actually have is less mirror neurons in our brain at this point in time.
Just for listeners who are unaware of ASD, could you what that stands for?
Sure. ASD stands for autistic spectrum disorder. So what you will know about that population of children is that they sometimes have very difficulties understanding their emotions and being social with other people. They find it very, very different. One of the reasons why they find that different is we have the mirror neurons in our brains. ASD children actually have less mirror neurons than we have. So when I work with some of our children who are on the autistic spectrum, I say to them, and I explain what happens in their brain. What is happening in your brain is very different to what's happening in somebody else's brain. Let me explain what's happening. And I explain that about the mirror neurons and say, well, it's hard for you to read those emotional and social cues because you haven't got as many mirror neurons as us, or they're not working in the same way that other people's mirror neurons work in. So now they can have conversation where, hang on, I need to check in with your emotions because my mirror neurons aren't communicating with yours at the present moment. Can I check in with you? So that's a nicer way of having that conversation, that young person being confident to have that conversation with others. That is totally true. And then they can say, oh yeah, I'm feeling this now. So it's just a nice way. Once we understand how our brain works, and we all it's exciting in this day and age because we're learning more and more about neuroplasticity, and how the brain works. Then when we explain that to young children, they can actually learn to have a different response, because I can teach them now how to interact with people in a different way when their mirror neurons aren't quite firing the same way that yours and I's would fire in that same way.
Yeah, so I mean, that does make sense to me, what you're saying, that if I understand my emotional state, not only firstly am I at capacity to navigate it and to have mastery, but equally because I am aware of what that landscape looks like and feels like, it empowers me to better potentially perceive and receive someone else's emotional state. And that is social, is the interaction of two emotions, isn't it?
Correct. I love the way you said that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if maybe we have that emotional awareness first, and again, that's another great reason for children to do this, personal awareness and personal development resilience program that you offer. And so, if you had a magic wand and you could have your program, done by every child in Australia, let's just start there as a start. What do you think would be the outcome, or what would we see be different if all of the children really were capable of the ultimate experience, if they were capable of, connecting to themselves emotionally first and then socially with resilience and with compassion and curiosity? What might we, in your belief, see as a shift inside of either the school system or even, the adults that come out of the school system?
We'd definitely be seeing happier, healthier, more confident children. We'd definitely be seeing a lot more smiling faces and a lot more children achieving what they need to achieve for themselves. We would also be seeing a lot more curiosity and creativity. We'd actually be seeing a lot more children being able to use their imagination more effectively and creating even bigger solutions for our society, because our brain then becomes freer because it's not stuck in any of those negative beliefs or negative thinking spaces. We can create the world, we can create the universe, we can create whatever that we want to create in this lifetime. So, but just seeing happy, healthy, more confident children going through the school and stop seeing the struggle would just be amazing. We would just be living in such a different society. I know the news would probably be reporting very different stories. I'd like to revamp that program, to all, not just to sort of say, I don't want to see the world in utopia. I love it when children go through those negative life experiences because there's lessons to learn in them. But what I want them to do is go through them with ease and grace and come out the other side and go, I learned this. So when young people now work with me, I get phone calls or emails all the time saying, I just went through a tricky life experience. but I just learnt this. So they can evolve themselves now as a different person because of the learnings that they've taken through life with them. So therefore, then they can create the ultimate experience. You know, the sky's our limit to what that would look like if everybody went through the program and really connected in with themselves, understood how their emotions, thoughts, and energy connect with every experience that they have. We would definitely be living in a different place in time.
We really would be. I believe that too. And I guess it's really teaching children that there's no such thing as a problem, just an opportunity to, you know, I guess to evolve or to grow. And then, of course, life becomes a much more inviting in engagement opportunity, right? As opposed to something to hide from or avoid. If we could really have them experience themselves as capable and agile in a world that, as you said at the very beginning, is going to life. Life is going to life, and we get to dance with it. So we don't want to keep, you know, I think so many, you know, as parents, we're like, I need to keep myself safe, my child safe from the world. But actually what we want to do is teach them, you know, resilience, because that teaches them to dance with life in a way that's really empowering. So, you know, if parents at home were going to do one thing today at home, I mean, obviously they're going to look up your programs and see how they can enroll in them. But other than that, if they could do one thing at home tonight, maybe differently with their children, or you know, the next time there's a conflict or a rift at home, what's one thing that you would say, hey, parents, let's start doing this at home?
Let's start having different conversations, you know, just engaging, just sitting and being with your child would be my one big tip. Just be sitting, just checking in what's happening for them. You know, no judgment, no nothing, just a genuine hi and check in. You know, how was your day? What was happening? You know,
presence, right?
Yeah, just being present and just sitting there and going through connection. You know, just really connecting in with them and really understanding them, you know, and you start seeing them in a different light. You know, I know when I went through my own experiences, you know, and through my own parenting, you know, there were times where I just sat and looked and just sat and watched. And I saw this little person through a very, very different light. I used to love doing it when they went to bed, actually. When they went to bed, the one thing I used to do was just sit there and stare at them, you know, and smile.
Sounds no, just kidding.
No, but it was because it just made me have a different appreciation of them and different look through a different lens at them. And it was really enlightening. And I was able then to respond and have different conversations with them because, you know, my children were challenging. They certainly went through the challenging life experiences that some of the little Vegemites happening in schools at the present moment. But what we did was we worked through that. You know, I sat with them and went, I understand. And I guess that's one thing I'd love them, the parents, to say, just to sit and look and say, I understand.
And would it be a great, you know, potential opportunity for parents to just start talking about feelings more, like you said you did with your kids? You know, just simply asking, how are you feeling in this moment, starts to attune a child, doesn't it? Or I would think so, to their emotional environment. Oh, I'm feeling this, like, and as opposed to just a surface level question, how are you? Good, as everyone tends to say. Genuinely, how are you feeling? Like, where's your heart at? How's your body feeling? Like the different layers. I think that would, particularly depending on the age of the child, be an interesting tool to start with as well for parents. And so, you know, if you were to give, I guess, kids or parents, even let's go with kids, if kids were listening in and tuning in, and I know that you teach, you know, energy, and you teach different children, you really do, what's the word? Alchemize your offering to kind of be bespoke to the child. But if a child was like, well, you know, life is just the way it is, and it feels a bit hard at times, what would be one thing that you would want the child to know, if we could kind of have you speak to every child at the moment? Like, what's one thing you would like them to know is true?
That you're you, and that you're unique, and that it's amazing when we learn about our emotions, thoughts, and energies. And it's even more amazing when we actually get to love every single emotion that we have, even the angry and frustration emotions, you know, and just knowing who you are and celebrating you as a young person. So really you understanding who you want to be, but also understanding every one of, as I said, every one of those emotions, every one of those thoughts, you know, even the negative thoughts, they're all here for a reason. They're all serving a purpose. They're all teaching us something. So, just really understanding and loving every aspect there is of you and really connecting in with who you are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I just had a thought, so I want to unpack it just quickly. Before, when you were talking about the autism spectrum, and I know, I have a lot of parents in my field who talk about, ADHD and a whole range of different, I guess, diagnoses of their children. And I know there is a thought or a theme of thinking that is, that these labels are actually a hindrance and they can really limit children. And then equally, when I think about what you shared before, that the brain is functioning differently, and that once children have that diagnosis, if they understand how it's different, then we can give them tools to move forward. So I just wanted to ask, with your wealth of understanding of the way that children's brains in particular work and how behavior is formed, what are your thoughts on, I guess, this seemingly increasing language around diagnoses? Like I was having just a conversation last night, for instance, around, and I apologize and, excuse my ignorance if I say the correct name of it incorrectly, but it was something like, something authority. No, basically it was a title that meant that the child is completely resistant to being told what to do by an authority. Oh, what is it? Something defiance behavior, something.
Oppositional defiance disorder.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I could not remember that. I hadn't heard it before last night. And anyway, and the person who was sharing, about it was kind of saying, it just sounds to me like a whole lot of BS, and that this child really just needs better discipline. And I was like, it just brought this question up for me around the value of labels, but also potentially the danger of labels. And I don't have an opinion on this. I'm not sure what the answer is. So I'd just really love to know, I guess, your thoughts on the increasing use of labels, and is it of service, or what are the pros and cons? Because perhaps there's, two sides to that story.
And there are two sides to that story, absolutely, because, everything's on a spectrum. Even children for ADHD, the spectrum starts here. They will start displaying some type of behavior that's not conducive to learning, not being able to sit still. And then we've got the other side of the spectrum, where our brain becomes so it loses its connections from time to time. And for those children that are at this end of the spectrum, when they lose their connections in their brain, because their brain is wired differently, yes, they do sometimes need medication for those brainwaves to be able to talk to each other. And I explained that when I work with children, I get a model of the brain and say, see this connection over here? It's not talking to this connection. By you taking your medication, what it's actually doing is learning how to meld those neural pathways beautifully together so it's connected again. And over time, and I've seen this happen with children, over time, they can actually stop the medication because the brainwaves have actually done the job that they need to do. They're now connected. But for that to actually happen, what they actually need to do is to understand their energy in their body, understand their emotions, and understand their thinking, and understand what's happening more so than those three components, what's happening in their body and what's happening in their brain. So basically, children who have ADHD sometimes, which is attention deficit disorder, what they have really trouble doing is actually sitting still. They look like they've got so much energy they could just burst, it's just like a big balloon, and one day it's going to burst because it's got too much energy contained in there. So what I teach them, first off, is I teach them about their energy. And I teach them about that they've got low energy, centered energy, and high energy, because often, not always, but often children with ADHD is stuck in high energy. Their body hasn't learned yet to go from high to centered to low to high to centered to low, or high to centered, low to centered. So we play lots of games around that and really get the children to feel the different energy within their body so they can start having conversations and saying, yep, I'm stuck in high energy at the present moment. I need to shift my energy. And I teach them how to energy shift within their body. So that's one of the areas that we do. And sometimes for ADHD children, their brainwaves, their thinking is just going so fast that it becomes overwhelming for their brain. And so when our thinking becomes so fast, it transfers back to our body. So I teach them all about the brain and body connection so as they can get that seamlessly flow through the brain and the body. And one way I do it in the program is to get the practice effect in what we actually do, because when I teach a skill, to get to self-mastery. So I teach everything from a skill. Emotion is a skill, and I know there's different thoughts out there, but this is the way I found that I can logically teach children, is that I teach emotion as a skill, thinking as a skill, energy is a skill. And when we practice, we master the skill. So we master the skill of emotion, master the skill of thinking, master the skill of energy. And that's where the term self-mastery actually comes from, because we've mastered the skills of our body and our brain. So yes, labels, sometimes we do need them, but other times we really don't need them. We just need to know more about our body and brain and how they connect and what our body and brain are experiencing. We can then practice some skills and then we can retrain. And that's one thing, as I said earlier, neuroplasticity, how exciting is that? And that way we now know that we can develop new dendrites in our brain, and with time we develop new neural pathways. And that's how we get the practice effect in the program. So what we do is, when we learn a skill, we either do it in paintings, we do it in Lego, whatever works for the child, in plasticine, pipe cleaners. And every time they practice a skill on the way they're representing it, they put a dendrite. When they've practiced the skill, say 16 times, or when they feel like that skill is strengthened, they then create in their picture the neural pathway. And they get excited about, oh, wow, I can actually grow my own brain. I go, yep, you can. You can grow your own dendrites. You can grow your neural pathways and strengthen them. They've learned that skill for life. You can never unlearn that skill once you've learned that skill. So therefore, then children look very differently in class, because they actually understand their body and their brain, or they can have conversations with their teachers and say, I need to do this because my brain or my body is reacting in this way at this point in time. So see how that conversation has just shifted?
Yes. So what I'm, again, just hearing and reflecting back is that the labels are not so much the issue. And if a child has been given a label, then really empowering them, first of all, to understand what that means in simple terms, and then show them skills to navigate around it, but also simultaneously to empower our children to know that we are never anything forever, and that we have the capacity to change, to grow and evolve, which, every adult on the planet could also bear being reminded of, I think. So yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. And then, the work you do in the world is so important and so valuable. So on behalf of, parents everywhere and children everywhere, I just want to salute you and say, I see the work that you do, and I think it's amazing. Thank you for being you and doing what you do in the world. As I said, we will link to all things, the Resilience Tutor, so that people can find you on all the different platforms. I know you have Facebook communities. I know you have so many also free offerings and beautiful gifts and guides that are free to download for parents. And of course you have incredibly affordable, in my experience, programs that offer true change and real tools. Like, you're a very tangible teacher, which is one of the things, as someone who is so about growth and change and transformation, what I know to be true is, yes, knowledge is empowering, but experience creates wisdom. And we have to practice and be in the experience. And then that felt known reality in our body, as you say, we can never not know it. It happened, it's real. And that's something that you're very, very, very gifted at. And so, I can't, recommend more highly your offerings. And if you are a parent out there that, has a child, and, let's be honest, sometimes as a parent, we might even know the things, we might be trying the things, but our children can sometimes receive them better from someone who's able to deliver them in ways that, first of all, are more age appropriate. But secondly, just being a safe space outside of the home environment, outside of even the school environment, can be so much more easily received by a child. And that's something that I know that you're very passionate about, and your whole model is expanding and exploding. So if people haven't yet seen or used it, I'm sure that they will very soon be aware of it on a much bigger scale. But they can reach out to you, and they can, if they're really needing help now, don't wait, don't let this fester, because as you said, proactive is best. But if something's already happened, or if your child has already developed a situation or a behavior or a way of being, it's not too late. I mean, I know with parents who are often like, oh, they're just gone off the rails and they're just this, and I don't know what to do. And it's almost like they throw up their hands and they make it mean that they're a bad parent, and they want to dig their head in the sand. And I you know, if that's you, and if you're in that place, firstly, you know, I feel you in my heart, and I know what it's like as a parent to judge yourself around what you've done or what you didn't do right. But there are solutions and there is change available, and your child and your family home and even, you know, your life is worth seeking the solution and reaching out to Lynn and giving them these tools, because they'll have them for life. Yep. This is why I've been so excited about working with the youth and seeing these changes, because they will have these for life. And they'll just, by the time they hit adulthood, they'll already have mastered them. So, yeah, so if you're in that place, don't hesitate. Lynn is incredibly affordable and very, very good at what she does. So, Lynn, thank you for being a guest on the show today. I appreciate you. We could talk, I know, for hours about more and more things, but I think what we've delivered today at least really empowers the parents out there and gives them a starting point. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.